Welcome to the Champions of Active Women podcast. In this podcast, we will interview women who have been successful within athletics and beyond. We hope that the amazing women in these interviews encourage and inspire girls and women to be active for a lifetime, to reach their goals, and to break new barriers in sport and life. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative in the Sports Medicine Research Institute at the University of Kentucky. The mission of the Active Women's Health Initiative is to optimize health and promote physical activity and wellness for girls and women across the lifespan. We hope you enjoy our conversations and join us in understanding women's health today to ensure women's health tomorrow. On today's podcast, I'm joined by Mary Noyes, a member of the Active Women's Health Initiative Advisory Board. Mary is a former employee and owner of Aircast and has had a career specialized in science, education, and product evolution. She serves as a member on several nonprofit boards, is passionate about medicine, music, art, and athletics, and is constantly striving to maintain an active lifestyle. And welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So could you start today by just telling us a little bit about your previous sport and or physical activity experiences?
Sure. So as a little kid prior to Ninja Warrior, we found just a wonderful passion running through the house, trying to jump on all the furniture and not fall down and be acrobatic inside the house. That also led us to, my dad had a toy company called Play-Doh, and we would roller skate at 4 years old in the factory. And I realized this kind of adrenal, this excitement of exercise was very early in my life. In terms of sports, I got on skis at age 4. We had a rope tow, which you know what that is, a little engine and a rope tow, and we skied, and it just became so clear to me that to move was just kind of, I was born to move for me.
So how did you get into those sport experiences? Did your parents encourage you? Did you have siblings who were doing it? How did you get into those experiences?
So great question. I am one of 4 that then turned into one of 7 with the Brady Bunch family. And we all played together constantly. It was one of those things where, you know, there was no TV. If we did watch TV, it was sports or music. And we were outside all day, or we were inside building tracks and creating, you know, I forget how we built a slide going down the staircase, and we were able to go down that. And I think it was a very natural path for us. As they became organized, I very quickly gravitated towards tennis and skiing, and those were my 2 primary sports as a young girl.
Okay, great. Could you talk about any ways that sport or physical activity impacted your education as you went through school, either early school experiences or graduate education?
Absolutely. I think sport, like art, really is where we reveal ourselves. So it was just a natural path for me. In school, I think it's all about routine and how you build behavior and habits that you can reproduce when you get behind, say, in schoolwork, you know. And so when you learn how to go to practice, and then you have to have food, and then you have to study, you build these patterns, and they become second nature when there's trouble. You know, everything's good when you're playing well. For me, it was all about learning when you're not playing well, or if you forget to eat, or if you don't do all your homework, that then they can compound. So sports as a place where I really feel like was born out of is just an incredible foundation.
Mm-hmm. So it gave you some structure that helped you all the way through
Absolutely.
School, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
So in what ways, thinking kind of a little bit more long-term, in what ways did sport or physical activity impact your career?
I would say absolutely the foundation, almost like the scaffolding for how I built my career and my portfolio, because I ended up in sports medicine. I ended up in a family business. My dad broke his leg skiing, and he healed his own fracture inventing the Aircast product. And that, in turn, grew to be a bigger company, which is how I met Dr. Ireland. Mm-hmm. And so structure, again, building patterns that you stick by in order to do the best and be the best you can be in your job.
Is this something you recognized when you were in these moments, or is it just now kind of looking back that you think about sport in this way?
So that's a really great question. I think what was second nature for me, I got it stripped away as I became a young adult, and I had a couple of very big sports injuries, which we can talk about later. And so then all of a sudden this kind of golden wheelhouse for me to operate in was taken away when I got hurt. So I'm not sure that exactly answered your question, but we'll just keep rolling.
Yeah, and that leads right into the next question about injuries. Can you talk about the injuries that you sustained and how that impacted your career and maybe your physical activity now?
So the first one was Achilles tendon rupture doing triathlons. And so I was wearing an air cast, which was our product, and that gave me a chance to figure out a different way to build a routine and build habits that really served me well, because I had to give up doing all the sports as kind of my meditation, if you will. Mm-hmm. So that gave me a chance to grow mentally if I couldn't run around like a spinning top. From there, I had some ski injuries. I tore my ACL. Okay. My ACL then got infected. So now I was fully immersed in this orthopedic world that I was working in professionally, and I had this real opportunity to be a patient, a grumpy athlete, and working with these world-class surgeons, which makes all of what's happening at AWHI that much more powerful to me, because everybody has to work together.
Yeah. What did you learn from those experiences when you were flipped over to the patient side that maybe was eye-opening or surprising to you?
I learned a lot about compassion. I learned a lot about bedside manner for physicians and physical therapists and whomever else was in that kind of ecosystem. I learned a lot about myself, so something that I really needed was stripped away from me. It gave me a lot of respect for people that get things stripped away from them, and that it would still come back. And in many ways, I became a better athlete, but of course I have age on my side. Mm-hmm. So each new surgery, I'm a little bit older and had to learn how to adapt. And so I would say adaptation is another really important component.
Yeah. And how do you think that how has that impacted your lifelong physical activity? So either sport, whether if you still participate, or physical activity in general?
So cross-training probably would be my simple answer. I had to learn to step away and into some other sports and not be so kind of linear towards just tennis or just skiing. And fortunately, a lot was happening in Eastern Europe, where in the 80s they were cross-training to be really great athletes, and so it wasn't just all tennis or all skiing. And they introduced yoga and other activities that I could be physical and just move, and that in turn both helped my rehab as well as kind of broaden my horizons to look at there are many more sports just than the ones that I was participating in.
Mm-hmm. Have you been able to go back to the sports that you started in and sounds like you love?
I have. So my tennis in many ways is better than it's ever been. I don't move the way I moved at 21, at 59, but my hands are still really good and my head is better. So it's very interesting how I can adjust that. And when I work with some of the juniors, I work really hard to get their head in the game, because they're naturally very talented, but their head is somewhere, or in the laundromat. It's not, it's not always attached as a young athlete, and particularly if you're kind of an intuitive, gifted athlete, you have to earn that back.
So not just game strategy, but being in the right space mentally to play and perform.
Exactly.
Well. Okay.
Exactly.
So if you think about your life, it sounds like physical activity and sport were part of every fabric of your life for
Absolutely.
Your entire life. If you think about your life without those things, so if you had not been an active child and didn't learn to love physical activity or didn't get the chance to participate in sports, how would your life have been different?
I don't even know that I could answer it, because movement is life for me, and people would say, what are you training for? And I'm training for life, and what I would tell any young athletes is, you don't have to be a good tennis player, you don't have to be a good swimmer, but just do something and move, because when you move, it actually changes the serotonin levels, and it gives them a chance to feel something they wouldn't feel otherwise by simply moving. And ideally, if you move a little bit more than just out of the chair or the icebox or down the street, you stand a chance at an incredible benefit as you age for your bones and your organs and your brain and
everything. Everybody says if it was a pill, you'd take it.
Exactly, everything. And I have so many friends. I really spend a lot of my time now with artists and in sports, and to me they're very similar. If you're an artist performing on stage, there is still that very high, level of brain activity meeting with your body. And if you're out on the tennis court or going down the hill 60 miles an hour like Lindsey Vonn just before she's retiring, these are all similar things that are happening that are really powerful.
Yeah. So I imagine that all of these sport, physical activity, career experiences that are around the sport arena, I imagine they've taken you all over the world. Can you tell me about your favorite place to travel?
That's a tough one. I was going to hope that you took that question out, but I love Europe for quality of life. I think they many of them live a very healthy life, which calls to me, not quite as obsessive as we are over here in the United States. They know how to rest, and they know how to achieve at a high level. I can also say I love really quiet spaces like Nantucket, where you're close to the ocean and it's remote and you really get to look within. And I'd add, I have not answered the question properly, but it's good because it's us. So I'd probably ask the West Coast, too. I think there's a lot to be said for California and some of the big trees out there. And anything that's outdoors is really our beautiful land, the environment that's so precious to us now needs attention.
I won't make you pick just one. It's okay.
This is a workshop, At 3 was really hard for me to narrow down.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to girls or women who are trying to be physically active or engage in sports?
I would tell them to move, whatever it is. And if it's as simple as jumping off the furniture in the house or getting out to the park, we know what happens if we move physically. And if you can, and so I now have learned over the years that, what I poo-pooed about yoga or just taking a walk, you know what? It works. So you don't have to be, you could be an intramural athlete. You could be as I mentioned, a Lindsey Vonn or Mary Lou Ireland or Mary Noyes in tennis. Just move. Absolutely move. And it has shaped my whole professional career and my girls. I have 2 daughters. They're both great athletes. One's been hurt and now is pre-med, but she's still an athlete. And it's shaping who she is.
When you think about your girls, what kinds of things did you do when they were young or to promote them in sports and physical activity?
So try and keep my sense of humor and make you chuckle. I mowed the lawn with them in my back, in a backpack. I skied with them in my backpack. Yeah. I took them on my rollerblades in a backpack. It's probably something we'd have to look for public safety, but we were able to put them in a baby jogger and ride 15 miles around this loop in Nantucket. And the baby jogger actually was like ski poles, if you can imagine it, because it provided stability.
Yeah.
So they always were doing sports with us. They lived on the tennis court, and they got on their skis right away. And they had to move because we were moving. Brian was a very good skater and became a good tennis player, their dad.
So lots of early integrated experiences, and it was just life.
It was just
the way things were
movement.
in your house.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I thank you very much for your time today.
Absolutely.